They may run out of Dos Equis or Corona in the GTA and maybe in Buffalo as well. I look at this series and if the Leafs play as they have played, not against Ottawa, but I think whenever they're confronted with a more physical, more proactive team like Boston last year, they were the better team than Boston. They didn't get the better goaltending.
Right.
And Boston was more physical. Now, this is a different Leaf team, and we have to acknowledge that. You've got, McCabe was there last year, but you've got Carlo, you've got Lawton, and Domi still here, and a few other. Pacioretty is very physical. But if you don't think the Florida Panthers are going to try to run them out of the rink, you've got another thing coming. They are going to freight train players. That's why, and I think I mentioned it in one of my columns on Hockey Hot Stove, but I'll mention it here just to illustrate the point. And it's a complete 180 from what you would think based on who I've ranted and raved about getting out of the lineup and being out of the organization. This is a series where Ryan Reeves can be used. This is a series where, I relayed the story, Norm, and back in our golden days of rooting for the Leafs in 93 and 94, the famous Marty McSorley fight with after he took out Doug Gilmour, tried to take out Doug Gilmour with Wendell Clark. That was because Wendell Clark was going at Wayne Gretzky in that first game, was hitting him, was trying to not take him out, but was just trying to be physical with him, and Gretzky was not a physical player. And McSorley went to the Leafs and said, "You keep doing that, I'm getting Gilmour. I'm going to tit for tat." And he did. And if you noticed, the Leafs didn't go at Gretzky anymore, and Gilmour didn't get attacked. But it was mutually assured destruction. The next year when they played Vancouver, Pat Quinn was sending Gino Ojic to go out and get Doug Gilmour, and Wendell Clark went to the Vancouver bench and said, "You keep going at Doug Gilmour," and he pointed to Pavel Bure. He says, "He's dead, man." Okay.
Do you honestly think Ryan Reeves strikes fear in the heart of the Florida Panthers?
Well, not by words, but by actions.
Okay, so he goes and beats the shit out of somebody.
No,
you think that's just going to change the game plan?
No, beats the shit. That doesn't do anything. No, if Sam Bennett runs Austin Matthews or Mitch Marner, then Ryan Reeves will. Who cares if he gets suspended for 10 games? This is, you've been paid a salary here. Now, yes, you prefer to fight, and I'm not saying being dirty. I'm saying blow somebody's ACL out. But what I'm saying is, if somebody tries to check Austin Matthews, or somebody tries to take, do something akin to what Aaron Ekblad did to Brandon Hagel, then the Leafs have to have a response in kind. And if they don't, then Florida's just going to keep doing it and doing it and doing it.
This is the Leafs Convo for Oak Ridge Ford in London, Ontario. OakRidgeFord.com is where you're going to get your next vehicle. Like the content, subscribe to the channel 22 in the show right now. It's all of the OGs. We appreciate it very much. So you have Reeves laying in wait. What kind of minutes do you give this guy? How do you implement him into the game other than to just prevail over the activity and strike accordingly?
Well, game one, I think Craig Berube is going with the same lineup that he had in Game 6. You don't change your lineup after you win a series. This is based on what Florida does, and I think we know what Florida is going to do, but based on what Florida does in Game 1. So if they have Ryan Reeves in Game 2 with the last change, you play him on the fourth line, and you probably play him 5 minutes.
Right.
You have him go out there and throw his weight around. He can, he can still check. He can still throw some bodies against the wall.
Sure.
And if somebody gets out of line, then how about earning that $1.35 million they paid? Because what did he fight once?
Do we know definitively Florida is coming at the Leafs like a freight train?
Yes.
Because if this were a game of chess, and or a skill fest and or a competition where it was just all about passing and shooting and finesse and effervescence, the Panthers probably don't win the series. So they've got to implement and apply what's good about them, and that's just the physicality and the ability to intimidate their opponents. Craig Berube said yesterday that he believes his team is ready for it. They know it's the playoffs. They know what's coming. They know the history. They've already been through it, and they know, again, and I've used this word, but they know what's at stake. Time will tell, Mike, and it all begins tomorrow.
Yeah, I mean, one of the things that you have to remember when it came to the Berube Stanley Cup win in 2019, they had skill players. They also had Braden Shen. They also had guys like Patrick Maroon and Joel Edmondson, the former Leaf, and Robert Bortuzzo. And they had these Zach Sanford. They had the Barbashev. They had these Energizer Bunny type forwards who would just go out and Jordan Nolan. I mean, he didn't, but you know what I'm saying? They had these guys who on the fourth line were physical, would hold the opposition accountable. And they out-Bruined the Bruins in 2019. Now, the Leafs don't have that lineup, and you're not expecting Austin Matthews to be a physical force. You don't want him to be. But you're going to need guys like Pacioretty, experienced guys who, he's a physical player. Guys like Max Domi. Now, he's got to be under control and not take stupid penalties like he did during the Ottawa series. But they're going to need him. He fought Sam Bennett earlier this year. He was punching him in the corner, and then they dropped the gloves, and Bennett wasted him. It's not about winning the fight. It's about fighting. It's about holding the other team accountable. And I don't know whether it's going to stop them, but if Toronto says, okay, you're not going to push us around, right. we're going to, you go at Mitch Marner, we're going to take out Sam Reinhart. Sam Reinhart's going to taste the plexiglass. That's how you win series.
Right. Okay. Arnav, my boy, nice to see you, man. And, a little bit of positivity this morning. Anything can happen in the playoffs. Just look at last night's game. I mean, Dallas, Mikko Rantanen, upsetting the Avalanche. You have the Jets on the ropes with the Blues. Anything can happen in the playoffs, Mike. Well, for me, it's just a matter of let's see the first few shifts. Let's see how things go after the first period. What's it look like mid-game? Where are we at going into the third? And again, it's really hard for me to project how anything's going to go until I see the two teams combat. And who knows, we may be overstating what the Panthers are truly about when it comes to playing a team like the way the Maple Leafs as of today, or it could be a 4-game sweep, and we're going to be lamenting another lost opportunity.
Well, one of the first comments in the chat was about will Marner come up to meet the challenge.
I mean, how is he going to? He's not a physical guy.
What I'm saying is, Rantanen has had a history of doing that, and he took the team on his back last year. But if you relate this back to the Leafs, remember, Mitch Marner did not waive his no move clause in a potential deal for the Leafs to get Mikko Rantanen. How would the Leafs be with Mikko Rantanen as opposed to Mitch Marner? Now, Marner didn't play a bad series against Ottawa. They need him to help on the power play. He's great on the penalty kill. They need him to contribute 5-on-5, setting up Matthews and Nyes for goals. But if they lose this series and if Marner is a disappearing act, then people are going to say, well, you didn't waive the no move clause, and we could have had Mikko Rantanen, and look what Mikko Rantanen did for Dallas. I mean, that's the legacy of Mitch Marner here. It's like, you don't know what's going to happen on July 1st. I particularly think he's gone, but maybe I'm wrong. Maybe he decides I want to stay in Toronto, and maybe Toronto decides they want to pay him, but he's got to show up in the playoffs. He's got to be a difference maker. And if he's not a difference maker, then he may as well want to get out of Toronto because he's not going to get a favorable reception from the league.
I don't want to go on about Marner too much. Is it the organization or not? But What didn't he do in the first round that Nylander, Tavares, and Matthews did? I'm confused.
Score goals.
He doesn't score goals. He facilitates.
He has to score goals.
But
he does score goals.
He got 8 points. Nylander got 9.
I'm saying he doesn't score goals at the rate that Matthews and Marner does, or Tavares does, or Matthews and Tavares does, and Nylander does.
When has he ever? Again, I'm not Mr.
Defensive
Marner. When has he ever scored to the same clip as those guys? He passes the puck and provides opportunity for others. I think people just hate the guy. They just hate him. If he had 1 point, Mike, if he had 1 point and this team barely scraped out the first round series, I get it. But he had 8 points. He had more points than Matthews and/or Tavares. I don't understand what we're complaining about.
I get it. But this is a guy who scored 30 and 35 goals in his career. He can score goals. He needs to score goals when and Massadatkas is right. Nylander was directly responsible for the Dylan Cousins shorthanded goal in Game 5 because he was dogging it, and then he turns it on in Game 6 and he scores the second goal and he scores the empty netter. Okay. All hands on deck. Yep. They cannot have passengers.
I think Paul Maurice is more concerned about this series than we believe he and his team are. He's a good coach. He's a smart coach. Look, he's got a history with the Maple Leafs. He's won his Stanley Cup. If there is any coach out there that I have tons of respect for outside of Craig Berube and his staff, it's Paul Maurice. Yeah, I'd love to see him coach the Leafs again one day. That's how much I respect that man, his trip through the OHL and what he did to wait for an opportunity to work for the Maple Leafs by coaching the Marlies for a year. I have nothing but respect for that man. I want his team beaten, but just reading between the lines and listening to what he has to say, I don't think he's as confident the Panthers are going to put the Leafs away as we all believe he and his team are.
One thing that Paul Maurice is extremely smart when it comes to handling the media and talking to the Toronto media and going out and say, oh yeah, we're confident we can win this series. That's providing bulletin board material to the Leafs. Of course he's going to be complimentary to the Leafs. He respects them. No doubt. But that doesn't mean that he doesn't think that he has got the better team and that he's not going to be a physical or that team is not going to play the same type of game that they did against Tampa Bay, a team that is structured fairly similarly and dependent on speed and skill like the Leafs are. So he's gonna play from the same playbook. It's just a question of whether the Leafs. Now, I think the Leafs up front are deeper than what Tampa Bay, Kucherov, a playmaker, a guy who had 100 assists last year. He hasn't scored in 14 consecutive playoff games. Mitch Marner can't do that. But I'm not just singling out him. They need the core group to score. Right. They need their secondary scoring to back them up like they did against Ottawa. It's all hands on deck. You need every asset of every aspect and every asset on this team performing at a finely tuned level, or they're not going to win.
Mm-hmm. Well, when things got heavy in Game 5, none of those guys were around. They were ghosts because things got heavy. It should be heavy right from the very beginning against the Panthers. I think the Panthers have to find a way to be undisciplined and beat themselves, really, for the Leafs to have a legitimate opportunity to get ahead in this series and potentially win it. I just don't see how mano a mano the Leafs are going to be able to overcome the physicality and just that will to win that the Panthers will provide. I'm not saying the Panthers are going to go on and win another Stanley Cup, but they're going to fight as hard as they possibly can to hold their crown for as long as they can. So, I mean, again, like I said, I just need to see how this game starts, how it begins to unfold and unpack itself, and how the Leafs respond before, I can really get invested in a true belief that the Leafs have an opportunity to get it done. Last few points to you, and we'll get out of here.
Yeah, it can't be in peaks and valleys. Let's just say
Right.
that, because one of the things that sort of drove me nuts during the year, and I think it was the first time they played Florida at Scotiabank Arena, and they came out of the locker room with their hair on fire. They scored the opening goal. I think that was the game that Domi got into the fight with Nate Schmidt. It was like, oh, rah rah, here we go, and then they ended up losing that game, and it's like, okay. You have to. It's not something that you can do in fits and starts. It's
Right.
not. You cannot set the tone in one period and then expect to sit back and play your skill game. You're going to have to match their physicality and match their tenacity and their dirtiness. And they
Is there any way that the Panthers open up the series half asleep and the Leafs steal it?
Not a chance.
No.
Not
So how do you think the first 10 minutes of the game will go tomorrow at Scotiabank Arena? I mean, the crowd's going to be into it. The Leafs just won a series. The Panthers are still in the mix to defend their title. How do you think the first 10 minutes goes?
I think the Panthers are going to try to set the tone. I think they're trying to be overly physical. I wouldn't be surprised if Bennett or Kachuk do something. Now, they will not be as out of control as Ottawa was in game one. Ottawa wanted to do the same thing, but they're younger. They're less experienced. They took penalties, and they allowed the Leaf power play to take them out of the game.
The Panthers have a great penalty kill too, so they're ready. They're ready to go with the man down.
Yeah, Panthers have a great penalty kill. They score tons of shorthanded goals. 5-4 power play.
Right.
And the shorthanded goals almost turned that series against Ottawa around. So the Leafs are going to have to be very circumspect when it comes to the power play and not allowing. Sam Reinhart had 5 shorthanded goals. Wow. So that is something they have to be extremely careful about. But the thing is, they have to produce on the power play. If they don't produce on the power play, that will encourage Florida to be as dirty as they want because, hey, we can do this with impunity because we're not giving up goals. We're just wearing them into the ice. So
the first 10 minutes, Florida's going to come out gangbusters and do its best to assert a dominance over the series. How can the Leafs be successful in defending that, withstanding that, and responding to that with potential success?
Well, without Reeves in the lineup, because I don't think they'll start Reeves in game one. Without Reeves in the lineup, it's going to have to be team toughness. It's going to have to be, McCabe. McCabe and Carlo have playoff experience. They're hitters on the blue line. You don't expect that out of Riley, although Riley can do it every once in a while. Simone Benoit likes to throw a hit. The guys in the lineup, the Benoits, the McCabes, the Carlos. Now you don't want your defense fighting, so maybe it's going to come down to Steven Lorenz and Max Domi up front, and Pacioretty throwing a check. But it's going to have to be team toughness. If somebody tries to face wash somebody, then you make sure you get in the scrum and you push back on them. And if you don't do that, they're going to do it every single time.
Do you think the core 4 is ready to take the physical abuse and find a way to get it done this time? Not saying they will, but
if they're not, Norm, then they're living in fantasy land. They played this team 2 years ago in the playoffs. They played this team in their division in the regular season. They know what they're all about.
Right.
If you're not ready, you'll never be ready.
Yeah, I just think it's a test of wills. Not just skill, it's a test of will. So the Leafs, pound for pound, can outskill most teams, and certainly the Florida Panthers. But we've talked about this on so many occasions leading up to this moment and the moments that we're going to share going forward. It's about more than who has the best skill and who's got the finesse and the capability to score beautiful goals for the highlight reel. Who wants it more? Who is tougher? And if I'm tougher than you and we have similar skills and my want to win outdoes yours on most occasions, I'm going to win. And especially in a series where there are 4 wins to be had, I may cough one up. But if it's, it's majority rules, majority wins, it's typically going to be me, especially if I'm stronger, tougher, and I want it more. Last word to you, Mike.
Yeah, the other thing in this series is the goaltending. Stolarz, I believe, went 1-2 against his old team. This is a team that practiced against him, so they know him. He's going to have to step up. We know Bobrovsky's going to show up. If Bobrovsky does a Vasilevsky and doesn't play well in the playoffs, he's had a history of playing very well in the playoffs. Right. You're going to have to take his eyes away. You're going to have to get in front of the net. And Stolarz is going to have to step up and play well. If not, you may see Joseph Woll in the series.
Yeah, put the puck on net, Mike. We saw how many goals were scored off of just fundamental shots from the point. A couple of deflections, everything low. The Leafs scored like that. Ottawa scored like goals like that, or scored across the Stanley Cup playoffs. Is that the way to beat this guy? I mean, I just can't see the Leafs getting in his kitchen and having that much room to operate in front of him.
Yeah, I don't think you can phase him.
Right.
I mean, I don't think you can bump up against him or something like that. I think what you have to do is take his eyes away, is basically, screen him. Like Matthew Nice screened Allmark on the Austin Matthews goal. Mm-hmm. You're going to have to screen him. You're going to have to prevent him from seeing the puck. You're going to have to tip it. You're going to have to do all those things. He's a great goalie. He's won the Stanley Cup. He's making $10 million for a reason. So that's what the Leafs have to do.
What's going on with your new website?
Writing daily about the Leafs. We'll be writing something later today. And obviously it's the home of the Convo and home of Off the Post Radio. So, check it out. It's there.
Okay. What's the address and how can people get logged on?
It's hockeyhotstove.com, and you click register at the top of the page, and you just sign on and register, and then you can make comments in the forum and make comments on my blogs and everybody else's blogs.
Okay, Panthers at Leafs, Game 1, second round of the Stanley Cup playoffs, 2025 styles, tomorrow night at Scotiabank Arena. I'm not going to talk to you before then, Mike. You picked the Senators to beat the Leafs in 7. Leafs beat the Senators in 6. Can the Leafs scratch out 7 games against the Panthers and flip a coin?
They can. I'm predicting Florida in 6 games.
Didn't Florida beat the Leafs 2 years ago in 5?
In 5, yes. And the famous Radko Gudas picture of,
Yeah, so you're granting them a little progress in this second.
They're a better team than they were 2 years ago. Although they don't have Ryan O'Reilly, their defense is much better. But I still think I need to show me. I need to see it in terms of the Leafs matching up against this team. They're a bunch of demons, and they have to match their effort and match their physicality if they have a chance to win the series.
Sometimes the way we frame this, it's as if the Leafs versus Panthers is David versus Goliath, and it is not.
No, but the Panthers are favored.
Right.
So that should tell you something.
I think the Leafs can bring some physicality and some tenacity and make some strides in pushing forward against the Panthers and putting the Panthers on their heels. But it has to be, you've said, Mike, it has to be sustained. But, it's one thing to play the game properly, consistently for, shift in, shift out, period in, period out, game in, game out. But the physical toll that it's going to require to be paid to beat a team like the Panthers, I mean, that's the test. The Leafs could do it for a little while, but can they do it long enough to finally put these bastards out? And that's the question that we'd like to see answered favorably for the Maple Leafs. Regardless of the outcome, we'll all be here for it. OG's Converts, like the content, subscribe to the channel. We really do appreciate everything you do for us. If you left a nice comment in the chat and we didn't get to it, why don't you go over to the YouTube channel and leave the comment below the post, because it lives forever there. And there are other people who would like to be able to interact with you who are not here for the live. Mr. Augello, I hope you have a fantastic day, and get excited for Game 1 of Round 2, Leafs Panthers. I'm really excited for that. And then you and I will reconvene. I don't know, maybe Tuesday if we can. We'll see. OG's Converse, thanks for being here. The Leafs Convo for Oak Ridge, Florida, London, Ontario is out.